Well, good evening. I'm trying a whole new method of getting the lessons to you all. We tried the first night we met on campus and met outside of the building. The second night we tried Zoom. The third night we also tried Zoom, and literally it didn't pan out either direction. I have been sending you the notes, but for tonight and for the rest of this particular time of the class, we're going to do it through video. I've done this in the past for my world religions class, and it seemed to work out real well. I will continue to send you the notes so that you can review those as well, and also the tests. Again, will be coming to you through your email. If you have questions, you can ask me by email, or you can ask me by a text, whichever is more convenient for you. Um, we have talked a lot about different things, but tonight kind of fits into my particular wheelhouse, if you will. This is a lesson that I can really get into. This is a lesson, it calls it religion and science. And I really like that title, religion and science, because many people in the past have said, oh, it's religion or science. And in my thinking, they're correct in naming the chapter religion and science. I had a professor. I was a biology major and chemistry major in college, and I had a professor who was a Christian, and he taught biology and all the different biologies. And he used to tell us, he said, this is not a question that should be asked. It is not a question of religion or science. Again, he says, just like the writers do, it should be a question of religion and science. We could take them both into consideration. This is chapter 7 of the book. We have a few more weeks before we end with the final. I hope that you've been keeping up. Again, you have your notes. The test has already been sent out for last week. Look in your email. It should be there. Please get those done and get them back to me. I will again be sending notes out with tonight's lesson as well. Now, I want to talk about Galileo. You probably, if we have learned anything in school at all under the sciences or whatever, we know the name of Galileo. Galileo was an astronomer. He was a scientist, but Galileo was condemned by the church. The Roman Catholic Church condemned Galileo. Why? Because he went against religious views. He went against the traditional views of the church. The church said the earth sits motionless, and get this, they also said the earth sits in the center of the universe. Galileo came along and said, that's not true. Galileo said the Bible did not teach what the church was espousing. According to Galileo, he said that the earth actually goes around the sun. It orbits around the sun and is just a small part of the universe that is out there. But again, Galileo did not say that the Bible taught what the church was espousing. According to Galileo, the Bible itself did not even aim to teach scientific truths. They got mad at him because of something that he said, and in truth, he was right, and we know that now. Even today, there are major disagreements between Christians and those who argue straight biblical truths about creation and biological origins. Now, in other words, there's still arguments going on about how things came into being. A lot of people hold to the fact of the book of Genesis, and this is exactly how it happened. And then on the other side, there are the people of science and those who feel like they have the scientific truths, and they say, no, it really didn't happen just like that. It happened like this. Let's talk about a definition of science to begin with. The definition of science is this: a collective judgment of professional scholars who aim to explain the workings of the natural world through empirically testable theories. People who are professional scholars who can explain, if you will, the natural world, but they can only do that through testable theories. Not just theories in general, but they have to be tested. In simple terms, science can be seen as a body of belief or doctrine. Now, the connection, and there is a connection between science and religion, and it lies in the body of belief and doctrine. Now, let's talk about two views on science and religion. The first is inevitable conflict. This is kind of the view that science and religion are locked in a battle, if you will. They're locked in a conflict with one another, and only one of those can survive. This has been a popular thing. This has been popular warfare that goes all the way back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And in some places, this is still going on even now. There's this conflict between science and religion. For this group, the very definitions of science and the very definition of religion, it conjures up all kinds of conflict. But no matter how you look at it, there's a definite strain, if not an all-out defiance, between religion and science. Now, you ask the question, why? There are two entirely different views taking place when we talk about religion and science. Religion, this is important, this is like a definition. Religion consists of beliefs drawn from what might be called, or what many call, revelations from God. This is where according to most religious people, this is where the Bible comes from for Christians. This is where the Quran comes from for Islam. This is where the Old Testament comes from for those in Judaism. It is a revelation from God. Science, on the other hand, believes that science is justified only, and I want to hear this, I want you to hear this, only through the sense of experience. Only can I work this out through an experiment and find it to be true can I believe it. That's what science says. And both are at odds with each other. They cause conflict. And both religion and science believe that they are justified. A scientist believes that they're justified. A religious person believes they're justified. And there has been, and for a lot of people, there will always be this continuing conflict. Now, the two, religion and science, go back and forth and over a lot of different issues. Science says the world is round. Religion in the old days said the world's flat. You remember Christopher Columbus, and everybody said he was going to sail across the ocean. He was going to fall off of the earth because the earth was flat. Science says that the earth rotates on its axis. Religious belief was years ago that the earth is immobile. It stands still. Science says the earth is over 14 billion years old. Many religions contend that the earth is probably just 10,000 years old. Science says that humans naturally descended from earlier primates. Religion says humans are direct creations of God. Now, that's an interesting thought. Some science, let's say that, say humans are naturally descended from earlier primates, while religion says humans are a direct creation from God. And we might get into that a little bit later about how I feel about those particular things. The writer of our text, again, the two writers, Michael Murray and Michael Ray, they contend that there are flaws in both ideas. And there has, as they say, and I probably would agree with them, there has been more of a coming together of the two disciplines, science and religion. There's been more of a coming together, if you will, over these ideas. And the ideas between science and religion. Religious believers, in a lot of ways, have modified and reinterpreted their beliefs to better fit science. New beliefs. Religious people are taking on new beliefs based on, or built into the belief, or if you will, the light of new scientific discoveries. They're discovering new things over and over and over again, which means that those who fall into the other side of things, the religious side of things, sometimes have to take on new beliefs. There are two flaws in the claims of science and religion. Religion makes no natural or empirical claim. Science makes no claim concerning supernatural reality or immortality. Religion says this is the way it is. Science says this is the way we think, and this is the way it is for us. So, there is always potential conflict. Potential conflict between the two is always in existence. Now, here are some examples of potential conflict that can lead to actual conflict. Questions. Number one, does the existence of pain and suffering in the world give us good reason to deny there is a God? If God is real, and if God is as loving as Christians seem to believe, then why would there be pain and suffering in the world? That's the first question. Number two, does the fact that the universe has a beginning in time give us good reason to accept there is a God? Number three, does paleobiology give us good reason to think human beings descended naturally from lower primates instead of specifically being created all at once by God? The idea that human beings came and evolved, if you will, over the years from lower primates to where we are now, or according to religion, or at least some in religion, were we simply created all at once by God? Now, there are some options when we're discussing these situations. We can reject basically some things. We can reject religion. We can reject some religious data. We can reject, if you will, evidence of our senses, and we can reject, if you will, an interpretation of our sense data. Okay? Those are things we can do. But, okay, let me share with you something. We have to understand there are no set of rules for which we can rationalize. Therefore, we have to reject all of these things. Science and credibility. Let's talk about that for just a second. Science and credibility of miracles. There is a significant belief held by many in modern science that says that miracles are improper, and they also say that miracles are not a reality. They really didn't happen, and they still don't happen. That's what most of them say. Naturalists and even the theologian Rudolf Bultmann tend to agree. I want to read Bultmann's quote to you as we find it in this chapter on page 200. Bultmann wrote these words: "It is impossible to use the electric light and the wireless and to avail ourselves of modern medical surgical discoveries and at the same time believe in the New Testament world of spirits and miracles. We may think we can manage it in our own lives, but to expect others to do so is to make the Christian faith unintelligible and unacceptable to the modern world." Wow. Bultmann, a Christian, a theologian, and also a naturalist, says we have to understand the reasoning behind science. A philosopher by the name of David Hume, Hume, offers two arguments in favor of what Bultmann said. His latter argument says any evidence, and listen, any evidence we have of miracles is only seen by those who want to see them. In other words, Hume is saying the only people that believe in miracles are the ones who want to believe in miracles. And so they're looking for them. And they're conjuring them up. They're saying this is a miracle when it probably wasn't a miracle in the first place. And even then, Hume says, even when they believe, it's through distorted religious prisms. People that believe in miracles, according to Hume, only are looking at things through religious glasses, if you will. Now, Hume's went on to talk about many things, and I'm going to share with you the Humean, Humean, named after Hume, the Humean arguments for non-believability of miracles. Now, Hume says that people often use the word miracle to explain or try to talk about strange or uncommon events. Maybe somebody recovered from an illness that probably should have killed them. Or maybe someone escaped from a brush with death. You know, they went down a cliff in their car, but they were not killed. Or somebody is a gambler and they've had this wild stroke of luck using cards. Or as I want to point out, that our own miraculous son, birth of our son, Evan, Patricia and I were well into our 30s, getting close to 40. And we had lost 7 babies. We had 5 miscarriages. We had given up. We had adopted our daughter, Rhonda. She was a special needs child. We loved Rhonda. We had given up. We had decided we were going to just take care of Rhonda, and that would be our life together. When we moved from one place in Birmingham, Alabama to Owensboro, Kentucky, again, we had just said we're done with all this. And one day, Patricia took one of those old pregnancy tests and came back into the bedroom where I was, and she said, I want to show you this. And sure enough, it showed a positive pregnancy. Evan was born 2 weeks before Patricia's 40th birthday. To me, that's a miracle. But Hume would probably disagree with me. But even Hume himself does not deny that things do happen. Things happen, but they stop short. He stopped short of believing that they were miraculous events. He says they weren't miraculous, they just happened, and it was by coincidence. Hume had a definition for a miracle or of a miracle. He said it is a transgression of a law of nature by particular violation of the deity, or by the interposition of some invisible agent. Hume says they just don't happen. Miracles don't happen according to him. Wow. Now, a miracle according to Hume had to satisfy 2 conditions. Now, I want you to listen to this very carefully. It had to satisfy 2 conditions. It had to satisfy, one of the conditions was it had to violate or transgress the law of nature. According to Hume, for something to be a miracle, it had to go over and against the natural order of things, or the natural way things happen. He also says that if it's going to be a miracle, it has to be caused by a supernatural agent. Well, that's why they're called miracles in the first place. So, how can an event transgress the law of nature? Hume says it cannot. He flat out denies the possibility of miracles. An example of that would be the law of gravity. You cannot defy gravity in that sense, because if you drop something from your hand, it's going to fall to the ground because that's gravity. Now, let's talk about the balance of evidence argument. According to Hume, a definition of a miracle is an event that does not fit the pattern of a uniform experience. Something over and above and outside of, if you will, the way things are supposed to happen. Now, Hume rejects the claim of miracles based on his own, what he considered to be scientific evidence. He uses the wrong law argument. How many of us have come to realize events once thought to be miracles in the past, when seen through the eyes of science today, these miracles seem to have pure natural causes? In the past, when somebody saw something and they said it's a miracle, what's being said is that perhaps through more of the scientific eyes that we have today, that miracle, and I believe in miracles, but that miracle can be explained away by the sciences or by something happening. Example of that is the story of the Bible. The Israelites, when they came to the Red Sea in the book of Exodus, we find the Israelites, they're standing by the Red Sea, this huge body of water in front of them, the Egyptian army behind them, and they're hollering and screaming, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, if you remember the story from the book of Exodus, we know that Moses prayed to God, and God said, put your staff over the river, and he did, and then the river split. I mean, this huge sea split, and there was dry land. There wasn't even mud down there. It was dry land. And the people of Israel walked across the dry land. But then you remember when the Israelites started down into where the sea was at one time, the water came back together, and the Egyptians were drowned. But according to many people of science, they say can be explained away by scientific causes. I've heard people say, well, the water just receded all of a sudden very quickly, or something to that effect, or it really wasn't dry land. They just walked across an area where it was a little bit more shallow. There is something called the purely, P-U-R-E-L-Y, anomalous event argument. Purely anomalous event argument. This basically says that miracles are unreasonable and always should be unreasonable. These are the people who say there's no such thing as miracles. Miracles don't happen. Now, this kind of a thinking takes into account that an event can be unexplainable, but not supernaturally caused. People that believe in this way, the purely anomalous event argument, say, we really can't explain what's going on, but we do know that it was not caused by something supernatural. It just really can't be explained. As the writers of the book says, you always look for a simpler argument. I love that. You always look for a simpler argument. They went on to say that they to see no cause for something is better than believing in miracles. That's what they said. They said, don't look for a cause because it may not. Don't look for miracles because it just may not be happening. Those are the writers of the book. Now, let's talk about this Humean. Go back to that fellow by the name of Hume. Humean, Humean/style arguments for the impossibility of miracles. According to this belief, the Humean belief, this fellow by the name of Hume, miracles are transgressions which break the laws of nature. Interesting. They break the laws of nature. To Hume and to others, this is an impossibility. No one and no thing can break the laws of nature according to them. To Hume and to others, they took into account the resurrection story as we find it in the New Testament according to Christians. According to Hume, If there were a resurrection, it would be totally against the law of nature. Once a body is dead, it's dead. And he says that these miracles cannot happen because they break natural law. But the writers of the book say there is a better way to conceive of miracles more than just a violation of nature. For the authors of the book, a miracle is an event caused by God that cannot be accounted for by natural reasoning. They went on to say, and I agree with them, science has its limits. Science cannot show us an event that is miraculous. But also science cannot tell us that miracles are impossible. Science can only tell us what natural things can do through natural powers, and beyond that, it is a step of faith. Wow. Let's talk about more contemporary interfaces between science and religion. Science challenges religion. Let me say that again. Science challenges religion. Case in point, the Scopes trial. Do you remember the Scopes trial? It was the teacher who was teaching the theory of evolution in his biology classes, and he was taken to court and was being brought to court so that the court would tell him to quit teaching evolution. Actually, the Scopes trial was all about the trial of evolutionary belief versus the biblical accounts of creation. That's exactly what it was about. Alvin Plantinga, Plantinga, argues that evolution encompasses 5 distinct theses. Okay, and here they are. Number 1, the ancient earth thesis. The universe and the earth are billions of years old. So therefore, according to this, the biblical account cannot be correct according to some people. Then there's the progress thesis. Number 2, the progress thesis. It says that life has moved from simpler unicellular organisms to complex multicellular organisms over time. You want to break that down? We all came from a one-celled organism sometime way back when, and we evolved into what we are right now. The common ancestry thesis, which simply says that all terrestrial life shares a common ancestor. Then there's I believe the Bible actually says that too, but we're not going to go into that right now. Darwinist thesis. The Darwinist thesis. The mechanisms that account for diversity and complexity of life are those who are identified by evolutionary scientists. Interesting. And then finally, number 5, there's the naturalistic origins of life thesis. That life evolved. Critics of evolution tend to take issue with at least one or more of these ideas or these theses because of biblical teachings, and sometimes they find error in every one of them. But the question remains, how clear is the Bible on how old the earth really is, or how God intervened to bring life? I go back to the scripture of which I adhere to. And it says that in the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. Now, it also says that they said that God created this in one day, and this in another day, and this in another day, and this in another day. But then if you go back to another part of Scripture, it says, to God, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. In God's imagination, in God's thinking, there's no such thing as a day like we think of a day. So therefore, I believe that science and religion have nothing against each other when it comes to the idea of creation. The writers of this book say that revelatory evidence gets changed as new evidence is found. In other words, more scientists find different ideas and new evidence, then they change the whole scope of things. A lot of scientists, and again, I go back to my biology professor back in college. Many scientists do not believe that science is a threat to religion. I honestly believe it's not a threat to religion either. So I hold to that. Now, let's talk a little bit about applied intelligent design. AID. Applied intelligent design. Intelligent design theory, or the IDT, is really widely discussed. It's a version of what's called the applied argument. Applied argument when applied to biology. It was developed by a biologist by the name of Michael Behe, B-E-H-E. Sorry. He wrote the book called Darwin's Black Box. And Behe concludes that certain irreducibly complex things could not have come to be through the Darwinian process. He said that Darwin got some things right, but he didn't get everything right. He said some things that came to be could not have come through that kind of a process, because these things could only have come into existence by design. Behe says irreducibly complex processes are interacting parts that contribute to the overall function. And if you take away any part of that thing, then it no longer functions. The Behe says, look at a mousetrap. It basically has 3 or 4, maybe 5 parts. But if you take away one part of the mousetrap, then the rest of the mousetrap is no good. Behe says irreducible complexes might come into existence in many ways, but they cannot, he says, come into existence by a gradual process. Behe says, I believe in a design, an intelligent design. The last decade has brought a lot of people, a small group of scientists and a small group of philosophers who have come together and support religion in a new way, including Behe. Cosmologists who study the cosmic and everything that is in the cosmos, they say that the cosmos is continually being fine-tuned by a cosmic designer of the world and the universe. You look at design, especially somebody that's intelligently designing things, and you look at a big, huge cliff somewhere, and then you look at Mount Rushmore, which I've never been to. And the question is, which would have been designed? Of course, we go back to Mount Rushmore. It was designed. But that somewhere in the back of all of that, there was an intelligent designer. Same is true for what has been created. Now, theoretical intelligent design, IDT. William Dembski, Dembski, was a prolific theoretician for intelligent design. He said there is an intelligence behind the design of the world. He says we can use a 3-step process for reasoning what he calls an explanatory filter. This applied argument that he had can show us an intelligent design for all of creation. But in all of this, Dembski does not say that Darwin was wrong either. Behe, along with Dembski, says it's wrong when Darwinism is taken to the extreme and says that only one organism led to a larger or bigger organism. Again, people being evolved from a one-cell animal. Now, biologist Richard Dawkins raised the issue of religion and beliefs in supernatural entities. were explained, if you will, require an explanation of some unexplainable things. Religion was used before real science, he says, so that people could explain a phenomenon. Dawkins says before science came along, before real science came along, religion was there to give answers. Go with me back to Galileo. Before Galileo made his discoveries, religion and the church was trying to explain away, if you are, to explain how did this come into existence? How does the world revolve? How does the world, what is it like? What does the world look like? Well, it's flat. It's everything centers around the earth. We know that's not true now. But people before science, people tried to, if you will, explain away certain phenomenon. Many more modern evolutionary psychologists now believe that religion and beliefs are good, and they are hardwired into our systems. Now, on a personal note, I again reiterate, I'm not a believer that it's science or religion and that they're in total conflict with one another. I don't believe that by any stretch of the imagination. I am a man of science, but I am also a man who believes. I am a believer. I am a pastor. So therefore, I believe in both. And if something evolved over the years, I can understand that a little bit and have no problem with that. Religion and science is not religion or science. They are not in conflict with each other. That's what I want us to take away from tonight's lesson. Thank you all. I'm going to send you the tests on the last two chapters that we studied, and then we will pick up next week in the same venue that we are right now. I'll send you a video, and it'll be over the next chapter, which would be chapter 8, I believe. So good luck, and we'll be talking to you all next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.